After 2 years of giving up my career, my sleep, and any version of myself that existed before the accident, I came home one afternoon to hear my husband laughing on the phone with his brother, telling him that I would never leave because I was too decent to bail on someone in a wheelchair. So I proved him wrong. My name is Nora, and my story starts 2 years before the afternoon I finally chose myself. My husband, I'll call him Cole, was 40 years old when he fell from scaffolding at a construction site just outside Kingston, Ontario. It was a Thursday in October, the kind of cold, bright morning that makes you think winter might not be so bad after all. He was a licensed plumber with 15 years of experience. He knew every safety protocol. The harness failed, he fell 12 feet and landed wrong, and when the paramedics arrived, he couldn't feel his legs. The doctors used words I had to look up on my phone in the hospital waiting room: incomplete spinal cord injury, T10 level, partial motor function, potential for recovery with intensive physiotherapy. I sat in that plastic chair and wrote everything down in a notes app, because my hands needed something to do while my chest caved in. I was a dental hygienist. I had been for 11 years. I loved it. The precision of it, the patients who came in nervous and left feeling better, the colleagues who became real friends over time. The clinic where I worked was a 15-minute drive from our house. My schedule was predictable. My life, before that Thursday in October, was the kind of quiet good life that people take for granted until it disappears. When my husband came home from the rehabilitation hospital 4 months later, I didn't hesitate. I took a leave of absence from the clinic, told myself it was temporary, and made his recovery my full-time occupation. People told me I was incredible. They said what he had in me was rare. My husband's mother hugged me in the hospital hallway and cried and said she didn't know what they would all do without me. I told myself it was love. I still believe some of it was. But love is one thing, what I built around it, what I let it become, was something else entirely. The days settled into a shape that had nothing to do with who I used to be. I woke at 6 to help my husband with his morning routine, before the home care window arrived. I organized his physiotherapy appointments, tracked his medications, filled out forms for the Workplace Safety and Insurance Board, and spent hours on hold with Ontario Health at home, trying to get his PSW hours increased. I drove him to the physio clinic in downtown Kingston 3 times a week. I prepared the meals that matched his dietitian's recommendations. I handled the grocery shopping, the bills, the insurance appeals, the pharmacy refills. I cleaned the house, answered his emails when his hands were sore, and stayed awake some nights when he needed help repositioning. Because his back ached and the mattress wasn't quite right. My leave of absence stretched from weeks into months. At some point I stopped calling it temporary. My friends tried, they texted, they called, they invited me to birthday dinners and wine nights, and that cottage trip up near Madawaska that I'd been looking forward to for 2 years. I said no to all of it, not because I wanted to, but because I could never fully leave. There was always something. A prescription that needed picking up, an appointment I couldn't reschedule, a moment when my husband called from the other room, and the guilt of not being there felt heavier than the exhaustion of staying. The woman I had been, the one who kept a standing Friday lunch with her best friend, who sang badly in the car and didn't apologize for it, who had plans and a waiting list of patients who asked for her specifically, that woman grew quieter with every month that passed, until some days I forgot she had ever existed. What was harder to admit was the change in my husband. In the beginning, after the accident, he was grateful in a way that felt real. He thanked me for things I didn't expect him to notice. The way I remembered he liked his coffee with oat milk, the specific podcast he liked to listen to during stretches, the fact that I always placed his water glass on the left side where he could reach it easily. In those early months, there were moments between us that felt like the marriage we had before everything changed. But sometime in the second year, the gratitude quietly disappeared. He stopped saying thank you. He started expecting. If I took longer than usual to bring something from another room, he would call again, his voice carrying a sharpness that used to be absent. If dinner wasn't what he had mentioned the night before, he complained. If I had a headache and moved a little slower, he noticed, not with concern, but with impatience. I told myself it was the injury, the loss of independence, the frustration of needing help with things he used to do without thinking. I told myself the man I married was still somewhere underneath the person he had become, and that I just needed to wait him out. I was waiting. The afternoon everything changed. It was a Wednesday in March. I had gone out to pick up his medications from the pharmacy on Princess Street, and stopped at the grocery store on the way back. I was only gone for about an hour. When I came through the front door, I could hear my husband's voice from the living room. He was on the phone, and he was laughing, which was a sound I hadn't heard from him in weeks. I set the bags down quietly in the hallway and started to unpack them, and then I stopped. "Nora," he said, still laughing, "she's not going anywhere, man. She's too decent to bail on someone in a wheelchair. I don't even have to ask her for things anymore, she just does them. It's like having a live-in personal assistant, except I don't have to pay her." There was a pause while his brother said something I couldn't hear. My husband laughed again. "Leave, she's not built like that. She'd feel too guilty. Honestly, I've got it figured out." I stood in the hallway with a bag of groceries in each hand and felt the floor shift under me. Every morning I had gotten up before he woke, every phone call I had made on hold with WSIB, every form I had filled out, every night I had sacrificed, every professional credential I had set aside, every friendship I had let go quiet, all of it ran through my mind at once, fast and then slower, like something coming into focus for the first time. He wasn't struggling. He wasn't grieving. He was comfortable. He had found an arrangement that suited him, and the arrangement was me, and he was proud of it. I didn't walk into the living room. I didn't cry. I didn't say his name or let him know I had heard a single word. I finished putting the groceries away. I made his afternoon snack. I brought it to him, and when he glanced up from his phone, he smiled at me the easy way he had started to smile. The smile of someone who expected to be taken care of and had stopped wondering whether that was something he had earned. I smiled back. Then I went to the bedroom and opened my laptop. That night, after he had gone to sleep, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and did something I hadn't done in 2 years. I made a list of everything I did in a single day. I wrote it all down. The morning routine, the medications, the meals, the physiotherapy reminders, the insurance calls, the WSIB paperwork still in progress, the prescription management, the appointments, the driving, the cleaning, the grocery runs, the financial tracking, the forms for the provincial home care reassessment. When I finished, I sat back and looked at what I had written across 3 pages. I had not stopped working. I had simply stopped being paid. I had stopped being a professional with a career and become something my husband described to his brother. As a personal assistant, he didn't need to compensate. And somewhere underneath the love I had entered this with, I had let that become normal. I opened a new browser tab and spent an hour reading about PSW agencies in Kingston, what trained personal support workers provided, what their qualifications looked like, what comprehensive home care coverage actually cost per week. I pulled up the hourly rates and did the math. The number on my screen was not small. 2 years. I had provided 2 years of care at a professional level, around the clock, without wages, without benefits, without sick days, without any of the protections that would have applied to a hired worker doing the same job. I was not angry at the number. I was just no longer able to pretend I hadn't seen it. The next morning, while my husband was at his physiotherapy appointment, which I had booked, confirmed, and driven him to, I sat in the waiting room and sent an email to my old clinic. I asked whether they had any hygienist positions available. I explained briefly that my circumstances had changed and that I was looking to return to practice. By the time his session was done, there was already a reply in my inbox. My old supervisor remembered me. She said the timing was actually good. She asked if I could come in for a conversation that week. I replied yes before we got back to the car. Over the following 10 days, I told my husband nothing. I went to the clinic, spoke with my supervisor, and accepted a part-time position that would become full-time within 3 months. I found a 1-bedroom apartment not far from the clinic, bright, clean, affordable at $1,400 a month, and I signed the lease on a Friday afternoon while my husband was watching television at home. Then I contacted the PSW agency. I went through everything with the coordinator, his medication schedule, mobility needs, physiotherapy routine, upcoming appointments, dietary requirements, emergency contacts. 2 workers were assigned who would rotate shifts and provide continuous coverage. After that, I organized a binder. I spent a full day on it, tabbed exact dosages and timing, his physiotherapy home exercise program, printed and laminated, insurance documents and WSIB case numbers, his doctor's contact, his physio, his dietitian, his pharmacist. A calendar of upcoming appointments for the next 3 months. Instructions for the morning routine, the evening routine, what to do if he had a difficult pain day, who to call if something was unclear. I checked it twice. I added a third tab for things I thought might be overlooked. I did all of this not because I owed it to him at that point, but because I was not a person who left people without a plan. My leaving was not about hurting him. It was about stopping something that was slowly erasing me. The evening before I moved out, I was carrying a box from the bedroom when I heard his voice again. He was on the phone, quieter this time. "Yeah, she's here," he said. "Everything's fine. She's not going anywhere." I set the box down in the hallway and stood still for a moment. There was no shock. There was only clarity, the kind you only get when you have already made a decision, and then receive confirmation that you made the right one. I finished packing. I placed my suitcase near the front door, and when the house was quiet and my husband had gone to sleep, I sat at the kitchen table one last time and felt, very quietly, at peace. The morning I chose to go, I woke early. I made coffee, sat with it at the table, and let myself have a few quiet minutes in the home I had taken care of for 2 years. Then I helped my husband through his morning routine, the same way I always had, and set his breakfast in front of him. He picked up the remote and turned on the news. I placed the binder on the table beside his plate. "What's that?" he asked. "Everything you'll need," I said. "Your care schedule, all your contacts, insurance information, medication instructions, appointment calendar. It's organized by tab." He looked at me. "What do you mean everything I'll need?" "I've accepted a position at my old clinic," I said. "I've also signed a lease on an apartment across town. I'm moving my things today. 2 PSWs from the agency will be here at 9. They've been fully briefed on your routine, and they'll make sure everything continues without interruption." He stared at me for a long moment. "You're serious?" "I am," I said. I kept my voice even. "I've spent 2 years giving this everything I had, because I loved you and I believe that's what you do for the person you're committed to. I never needed constant gratitude, I just needed you to see me as a person." Something moved across his face, not quite guilt, not quite understanding, but the beginning of both. "I heard your phone call," I said quietly. "The one about having it figured out." He didn't say anything. "A wife is a partner," I said. "Not a personal assistant, not a safety net you keep around because she's too decent to walk out. I am decent. I'm also a person who is allowed to have a life." The knock at the door came right on time. I introduced the 2 PSWs, showed them where everything was, confirmed that all the information was in the binder. They were warm and professional and completely prepared. I picked up my bag and walked out. I did not look back, not because I felt nothing, I felt nearly everything, but because I had already made my peace with it during those 10 days of quiet preparation, and there was nothing left to resolve at the door. The weeks that followed were strange and necessary. I went back to the clinic. I sat across from patients and did my job and remembered slowly that I was good at it. My hands remembered what to do. My supervisor told me my skills hadn't gone anywhere. She was right. I called my best friend, and we made up for 2 years of missed lunches in about 3 weekends. I went to the cottage eventually, a long weekend in early June up in Frontenac County, and I sat on a dock watching the water and felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time, which was simply the sensation of being somewhere I had chosen to be. My husband called several times that first month. I answered once. "I know I wasn't fair to you," he said. He sounded different, quieter, without the easy confidence that had settled over him in the past year. "I know," I said. "I think I started treating you like the situation was your job. Like because you stayed, you would always stay. And I stopped being someone worth staying for." "Yes," I said, "that's what happened." He was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry, Nora." "I believe you," I said, "and I accept that. But I'm not coming back to what we were." We talked for a little while longer. I asked how the care was going. He said the PSWs were good, that he was adjusting. I told him I genuinely hoped things got easier for him. I meant it. When I hung up, I sat with the phone in my hand for a minute. Then I put it down and went to make dinner. Whatever I wanted, at whatever time I felt like eating it, in my own kitchen, in the apartment I had chosen for myself. A few months later, one of my patients mentioned, while I worked, that she was a caregiver for her elderly mother. She said she hadn't had a full day to herself in nearly a year. She said it the way people confess to something they think they should be proud of. Half apology, half plea for someone to tell her it was all right to feel what she felt. I finished what I was doing, handed her the mirror, and said, "You're allowed to need rest. You're allowed to need a life outside of someone else's care. That doesn't make you a bad daughter. It makes you a human being." She looked at me like I had said something she had been waiting a long time to hear. Maybe that's why I'm telling this story. Because somewhere out there is someone who has quietly given everything they have, who has been taken for granted so long that the taking feels normal, who has been told, or has told themselves, that leaving is the same thing as abandoning. It isn't. Walking away from a situation where your love has been mistaken for an obligation is not a failure. It is the long overdue act of remembering that you exist too. That your life does not belong entirely to someone else's recovery. That kindness given endlessly to someone who calls it a convenience is not love being honored, it is love being used. I know that now. I think I knew it before I was ready to act on it. If you are in that place right now, if you recognized yourself somewhere in this story, I hope you also recognize this. You are allowed to matter. Even to yourself. Especially to yourself.